Hey guys, it's Heather from Heather and Books, and I am here with my July wrap-up. I read 10 books this month, 5 I believe in the Booktubeathon and then 5 elsewhere, so let's just get started. The first book I read this month was Finnegan of the Rock by Melina Marchetta, and this is a book that I picked up because of Reagan's Peruse Project's recommendations, and I loved it. I would say this book was a 4 out of 5 for me. Finnegan himself annoyed me for the first 100 pages, and then Evangeline annoyed me for the next 50 pages, and then I finally got into loving all the characters to the point where I did pick up the second book, Foray of the Exiles, this month. The second book I read was Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen. This is a book about a girl who is taken by trolls to she's kidnapped by someone she knows and sold to the trolls to become the wife of the troll prince. And it's all about this complicated situation the trolls are in where they're trying to get out because they've been trapped there by a witch. And when it ended, I was like, no, you can't end there. Well, it turns out this is an entire series. This book was a solid 4 out of 5 for me. I really liked it. It wasn't like the queen of writing of the world, but it was very well written. And I wanted more, and then I went on her blog to find out when the new book was going to come out, and it turns out that Strange Chemistry, who publishes this book, is closing, and so she needs to find a new publisher for the second and third books. And so I'm really hoping she does that soon because I gotta get me some more of this. The third book I read this month was The Egypt Game by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. And this was a gift to me by my boyfriend for my birthday this year because he knows I'm obsessed with ancient Egypt and that I'd never read this as a child. I really enjoyed this. It is a kid's book. I'd give it 3 out of 5 just because the writing is a little bit antiquated from what I'm used to because it was written in the 80s, and so there were some things that kind of were jarring to me, like the language and the jargon that was used, but it is a very good book. So as long as you kind of qualify to your kids, this isn't what we'd really say anymore, but it is a good book, and you learn a lot about history and kind of the relationship between kids. I really did enjoy this. There were a couple aspects that kept me from giving it a full 5 out of 5, but it was definitely a really good solid 4 out of 5. So then we got into Booktubeathon, and so I read The Scrapbook of Frankie Pratt, and I really enjoyed this. This was another solid 4 out of 5 for me because it is a scrapbook style, and so it's really overview-ish. I mean, this book covers 7-8 years in this little bit of space, but it is really cool because what it is the scrapbook of a young girl who is a country girl who gets a scholarship to Vassar College, which is a women's college that still exists today, and it's about her being a scholarship student, going through college and trying to find her way in New York as a writer when women really didn't have jobs all that often, and then she moves to Paris, and it's about her time in Paris, and it's about all the different loves she goes through in her life and trying to find the right place. But this was a really good quick read. If you feel like if you love the 20s, if you love that time period, I would definitely recommend reading this book. If you love scrapbooking, read the book because it's just really cool. And if you need a light kind of romancy book and you need it quick, this is also good. And after that, I read The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which was a 3 for me. It's 3 out of 5 stars. This is about a journalist named Ed Malone who is courting a woman who basically says to him, I only want to marry an adventurer. I only want to marry someone who, by marrying him, I bring up my own status and people are jealous of me for being married to this great guy. So he has the chance, he goes to his editor, because he's a journalist at a newspaper, and says, I need something exciting. I need adventure. And he is directed to Professor Challenger as someone who will at least give him an amusing assignment. So he cons his way into seeing Professor Challenger, who's a really frustrating scientist and gets caught on this up in this adventure to go find what is referred to as the Lost World, which is, so he is sent on this adventure, and it's all about finding this place, and kind of, it's a classic adventure. I mean, it's straightforward, same way Sir Arthur Conan Doyle does very classic mysteries, straightforward. That's what this is. It was a little bit slow for me in the beginning and the middle because it was a lot of descriptive traveling, what was happening to them, and the problem is it was like a letter style, so you couldn't really get into what was happening because it was all missives back, and so large chunks would be just kind of skimmed over. But it was a very interesting book. The end was a good enough payoff for me to recommend reading this if you like classics or you like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, because it was a really cool world that they found. And so for me, just the sheer idea of the world they found was totally worth the read. And I think this is a whole series. It's called the Professor Challenger series. I think there's like 4 or 5 books in it, but it's really hard to find anything past the first one because I don't think the others really took off. So then I read 2 library books. I read Gone Girl, which I'll put a picture of here, which was, I'm sure you know, it was a thriller about a man whose wife goes missing the morning of their anniversary, and it looks as if she's been murdered or kidnapped, and he is blamed because all the evidence points towards him, and so it's all about him trying to find out what really happened and what's really going on. And oh my god, that book freaked me out so much because I couldn't figure out it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And then it drove me crazy that you couldn't really pinpoint who the characters were, which I understand is the point of the books. But if you are really down with psychological thrillers, if you're down with not knowing who the characters really are and just trying to figure out who they are, definitely read that book. Total 5 out of 5. I really want to read Sharp Objects, I think. This is the one I want to read. But I am so excited. I don't think I'll go see the movie though, because I'm not sure the movie can portray it quite the way the writing can. Half the beauty of that book was the writing, and the way the writing really portrayed the 2 characters. The next book I read was We Were Liars, by E. Lockhart, and I had never read an E. Lockhart book before, but I heard this one being hyped, so I put it on hold at my library. 2 months later, finally got it, so I read it, and it was amazing. I really want to buy it, and read it again, just because I want to see what the things were I missed. The ending, oh my god, I'm not going to say anything more about it because you're not supposed to know, and don't know. If you must, read the inside jacket, but just give it a go. It's only about 200 some pages, so if you aren't sure about it, do get it from your library, but I almost guarantee that the ending is going to blow your mind. That was a solid 5 out of 5, definitely. And then I read If I Stay by Gail Forman, which I picked up literally the weekend before I read it at Target. This was a reread. I had read it in like 2009 when it came out, and I loved it, and I loved it this time. Unfortunately, it did give me nightmares that my grandfather had died. I'm not entirely sure why, but it did. But this is a book about a girl who gets into a huge car accident with her family, and she has an out-of-body experience. It was all about her struggle to decide whether she wanted to survive when she knew her parents hadn't and she wasn't sure if her brother had, and when her family and her boyfriend and her best friend want her to. I think it's a really strong book, and I think it's almost kind of important for a lot of people to read who are struggling with why am I here, because it does, even though it's like an accident, it does kind of address a lot of those topics. This was a good, I'd say 4.5 stars for me. It wasn't the beauty of 5 stars, but it was a very, very good book. And then I was going to Florida with my family, so I had 2 3-hour flights. And I finally finished The Sicily Papers by Michelle Orange. I'd like you to get a load of this. This literally looks like a passport, to the point where my parents would be like, why do you have your passport out, when I had this up in my room with me. And when I was reading it in the airport, my mom came up and was like, oh, are you reading your passport again? Oh yeah, funny. But it is a really cute little book about a girl who is traveling through Italy, and the letters she writes to her friend, telling him about her experiences and about everything she's been doing, and it's one-sided. You know that the friend is sending her emails because she'll respond to them, but you really only see her thoughts, and it was really cool because she'd be reading books and commenting on books, and she'd be traveling and commenting on where she was traveling, and there's a lot of comments on culture, which I found amusing. But this was a good 3.5 out of 5. There was no plotline and very little substance. This book is for pure amusement, and it has a high amusement factor. I do recommend picking this up. It's a very tiny, short book, and I think it'll just amusement. Pick it up for amusement. And then on the airplane and through the days of the trip, I read Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. This is my first Rainbow Rowell book, and I was told not to start with this book, but it is the only one I own. I passed up buying Fangirl at Half Price Books earlier this month, and I'm kicking myself right now because it was like $8. But I really did enjoy this. This was a 5 out of 5 solid for me. The third 5 out of 5 Behind the Two Library books for me this month. And it was so painful for me to read because I thought the relationship aspect for me was overshadowed by Eleanor's home life and that plotline. And I know that wasn't what was supposed to happen, but I also loved the ending. I thought it was perfect. It was very fitting. Did I want the ending everyone else wanted? Yeah. I also didn't have the racism issues that people had with this. It is about Eleanor, who is a stereotypical American, and Park, who is half Korean. And it's their romance. I just loved this book. Painful. Do not go into this if you think that you want a light, fluffy read. No. Go read Since You've Been Gone. Go read any other Morgan Matson. Go read Sarah Dessen. But do not read this book. This book is for when you can handle cute YA that turns devastating fast. And the last book I read this month was a total guilty pleasure. Bones of the Lost by Kathy Rakes. And I read this all on the flight home. And I almost don't want to give this a rating because honestly, Kathy Rakes books are for me complete brain candy. I don't read them because I want beautiful literature. I don't read them because I want like solid 100% plotting or plausibility, really. I read them because I love the characters, and I've read all but like 3 of the 15 books, and I own all but like 3 of the 15 books, let's be honest. I still really enjoyed the book, and I really enjoyed the read, and I would recommend reading these books. I would start at the beginning, because though you do not have to, you can pick up any book and be fine. There are moments, like in this one, where her ex-husband, her daughter, or Ryan will show up. And there's each of them has a continuing plot line. You know, if you're okay being a little like, whoa, on those plot points, then start wherever you want. If you're like me and you like to know what's happening with these characters, these side characters, then I would start somewhere closer to the beginning. You could probably like skip to book 4. This was the last book I read, and I really loved it. And actually there's a new one coming out in a month that I'm excited about. So that is my wrap-up for July. I read 10 books this month that I am very psyched about, and I am looking forward to reading, hopefully, just as many in August. And I will see you later. Bye!